Hello and welcome to the 2022 Holistic Pain Relief Step Summit. I'm thrilled that you've taken the time to join us. My name is Trish Rossiter and I'm your host. This summit is for men and women living with pain and who want to get back to functioning better on a daily basis without the need for drugs or invasive procedures. If you haven't already done so, I invite you to join our Facebook group. Each day of the summit, there will be a thread where you can post your questions to the speakers and engage in some community building if you like. We'd love to hear as well your best takeaway from the day of the speakers. I am very delighted to introduce this evening Bonnie Flemington. And Bonnie lives in Oakville, Ontario. Bonnie is a certified nutritional practitioner, educator and speaker. Excuse me. In clinical practice, she works with individuals and groups with a primary focus on reducing inflammation and pain, digestive health, and hormone balance. Bonnie's unique approach provides clients with effective, realistic solutions and lasting results. Bonnie simplifies nutritional concepts through functional testing and helps her clients focus on what's most relevant for them to heal. She provides her clients with tools to integrate these solutions into their busy life and help them to feel more confident in making the best decisions long-term. In addition to running a busy nutrition practice, Bonnie has created an introductory anti-inflammatory guide, as well as a comprehensive group program called Pain Free Naturally. And we'll hear a little bit more about those in a bit. So welcome, Bonnie. Our presentation is called Gain Control Over Your Inflammation, Pain, and Digestive Issues. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here, Trish. It's a pleasure to be here as a part of this summit. And I'm really looking forward to all the speakers, all the questions from those who are listening, as the community grows in the group. I think supporting one another is a big piece of healing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Bonnie, tell me, how did you get into nutrition?
Well, that's a great question. Actually, it was my own health issues that got me into nutrition. I was feeling, in particular, joint pain. I didn't really know where that was coming from or what to do about it. I had started with, of course, going to my family doctor, which is often the first place many people start when something's not quite right. I had some images done and they said, oh yeah, you have some arthritis. Mind you, I think most people at a certain age do have some evidence of arthritis. What I learned through, I really wasn't able to be helped at really any part of what she was able to do or any referrals I had. They just weren't really able to help me. So I did some research on my own. And what I found, what I learned was really interesting and actually really, I'm going to say, changed the trajectory of what I was even considering for myself. And that was that inflammation was really the key driver of my pain. And this is the case for many people, that you can have two people with the exact same physiological issue, perhaps even an image on an X-ray or an MRI or something. One person's feeling a lot of pain and another person is not. And what's the difference between the two? It's the level of inflammation. And if we can, and I decided when I learned this, that I wanted to be that person that wasn't feeling any pain. So then in that way, you're taking a lot of pressure off, even having to fix whatever is perhaps not optimal or perfect, or like you were 16 again in your body, which isn't going to, some of these things aren't going to change. But I learned that my level of pain could really change. And I had to figure out what was driving my inflammation. So that was the key. And actually, if there's one thing I'd love for the listeners today to take away from, is that the level of inflammation in their body is a key driver for their pain. Now, it's everyone's different on where is that inflammation coming from. So I learned a lot. I went back to school. I studied nutrition. I hadn't been a nutritionist originally. And so this, when I say it changed the trajectory of what my own healing, it also changed the trajectory of my career, because I decided to work in this field after what I learned about changing diet, reducing inflammation through diet. And even since I have been practicing, and of course, I continue to learn myself all the time, and I take additional programs and courses. I've learned a lot about gut healing and how involved that is, and how much a part of inflammation gut health is, and stress. So it's really, these are the three keys that I want to speak about today in gaining control over inflammation and pain, is really the diet piece, but also rebalancing the gut. It's often the root problem, the area where the root is located, and then the lifestyle piece of managing stress, because that can really impact the gut health. And, you know, they're all intertwined. Nothing is in isolation in the body, right?
Right. Amazing how you've been able to help yourself. As many of the speakers I've been interviewing for the summit, they've not only has it reset the trajectory of their careers, but it's also helping them heal as well, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about the level of inflammation is the key driver, and is that something that you test then by levels, or just by degree of pain, or how do you know?
That's a great question. There are a couple of ways to test your level of inflammation. Obviously, you can go to your family doctor and you can have your C-reactive protein tested. That's a blood marker for inflammation. And definitely that's something your family doc can do. One of the tests that I do, it's called the GI-MAP stool test. It's a digestive health test. So it is a stool sample that you do at home. And one of the markers in there is testing the level of gut inflammation. And this can be a key driver to inflammation around the body. So I said earlier that the key is to bring inflammation down, but we have to know where it's coming from. So sometimes we'll get, say, that C-reactive protein or even a high sensitive C-reactive protein test done, and that just tells us we have inflammation systemically. It doesn't actually tell us where it's coming from. So this is what I really like about the work that I do, both with my one-on-one clients, as well as the Pain Free Naturally group program that you mentioned, is I include the GI-MAP stool test in the group program and run it also with many one-on-one clients as well, because it really does give us so much information, not just whether or not there's gut inflammation happening, but even what is causing the gut inflammation, because it's measuring our gut microbiome. Do we have enough good flora? Sometimes people have a lot of digestive symptoms and they assume they must have a lot of bad bacteria in there. Sometimes it's actually a deficiency of good bacteria that's causing similar symptoms. So it's hard to know what to recommend until we know what that looks like. And that's why it's a really important piece of what I do, because it gives us the information we need to drive the correct recommendation for you. So the person who's deficient in good gut bacteria might really benefit from, say, probiotics as an example. Someone who has a lot of overgrowth of bad bacteria might react quite poorly to probiotics. However, their presentation might be somewhat similar. Maybe they have gas and bloating, both of them. So it's really hard to know what recommendation to make without knowing what that balance is. And there's a lot of other things that can be driving gut inflammation as well, whether your bowel flow is good, if your pancreatic digestive enzyme output is good, what's your reaction to gluten, how is your liver detoxification? Are there any other pathogens or parasites going on in there, or a yeast or fungal overgrowth? So there's lots of different markers on this test that makes it extremely comprehensive, very useful, and something that I recommend for many of my clients.
Interesting. And is that something that you send off then, Bonnie, to have tested, or is it something that you visually look for yourself?
No, it's done at the work is done at a lab. So I do most of my work virtually. So I have the lab send the kit to the client. They can take the sample in the comfort of their own home and then send the sample back directly to the lab. And then the lab sends the results to me. And so if we're working individually, then obviously we will go through the results together. But even in the group program, that's why I include a one-on-one session with me to go through those individual results, even as part of my group program.
Interesting. Yeah, that's so you get right to the cause, so to speak.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, because have found, and maybe you've talked to a number of people who have tried one thing or they've tried another thing. Maybe something's helped for a little while, but it didn't permanently help. And this is a real way to get to the root cause. If you've got some solutions that have helped a little bit, but perhaps not long term, you haven't got to the root of it yet. So what my goal for those that I work with is to get to the root of the issue, to address it, and then they can be feeling better long term, and they've now found a solution that really is helpful for them long term. Now, that's not to say that life doesn't happen, and perhaps you don't have an accident or something else comes up in your life. I mean, health is a journey that we need to keep focused on. However, we shouldn't be suffering and in pain long term. We should really get to the root, and that's my goal for all my clients.
Mm-hmm. And now when we talk about inflammation in the gut and gut health, that of course manifests in other parts of the body. It's not just in our gut, correct?
Yes. So this is very interesting because when we have a lot of imbalances in the gut, it can lead to what we call intestinal hyperpermeability. And most often people have heard of that, called leaky gut.
Right.
So when we have some gut inflammation happening, now those tight junctions in our intestines can allow for some of that bacteria to gain access to our bloodstream, because when we absorb food and nutrients out of our digestive tract, they get access to the bloodstream. But under optimal circumstances, our body's keeping things out that shouldn't be absorbed. However, when these tight junctions are a little bit hyperpermeable, then some of the bacteria, perhaps it's an imbalance in bacteria, some of that's gaining access. If we don't have optimal digestion and we're not breaking food down really well, it may be partially broken down foods or incompletely broken down foods. Now we're able to gain access into the bloodstream. And once you get there, then it can really go anywhere and present as many, many different symptoms. So someone who gets migraines or headaches, someone else who has a cardiovascular issue, someone else has a thyroid issue, someone else has joint pain, those can all be rooted in the gut. Sinus issues, skin issues. These are all things that can come back to gut health as a root cause. And once we can rebalance, repair what's going on in the gut, then that relieves often relieves the symptoms of what's going on. So the symptoms of inflammation are numerous and varied. And really it almost, many of them will be rooted in gut health.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So that's a good place to start when you have pain that you don't know what's going on. It sounds like to me that's the best diagnostic tool, is to get a sense of what's going on.
Absolutely. So again, once we do get the results, there's a lot of recommendations that can be made. However, there's a lot you can do diet wise. Some of that we can see in terms of optimizing digestion. Those are things we can see from the test. But
Mhm.
even separate from that, there are many things that we can do and recommend in terms of diet, because we already know things like refined sugars, refined flours can trigger gut imbalances. We know that excessive stress triggers blood sugar issues and imbalances in the gut microbiome, increases inflammation. So we do know some of those things. So even while we're waiting to get test results back, a lot of change, we can start making a lot of changes. I actually had a client I was speaking with today, and he said it was about 3 days after making the diet changes, and we're still waiting on his results. We're just starting to work together. He actually he said 3 days in, he got up and went down the stairs as he always does. And he always used to have to hold onto the banister and just brace himself for the pain in his knees. He said, I didn't have to do that. It was 3 days of making these
Wow.
diet, and this is diet changes alone. And we haven't even got to the test results that we're waiting on. So we can really do a lot with diet. Alcohol contributes to leaky gut and inflammation, sometimes nightshades, but not always. So some of your listeners may have read things about nightshades and joint pain. They sometimes are an issue, but actually not always. You don't always have to give up those foods.
So the nightshades are vegetables that are grown underneath a leaf. Is that correct?
They are, yes, they are. And they're high in solanine, which is the compound that's thought to contribute to the joint pain. They are white potato, peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, primarily. Those are the primary ones that people think about, and it can be hard to avoid them all completely. Sometimes there's a little bit of tomato sauce in something, or maybe even chili powder. That's a pepper, right? So
Okay.
there's a lot, even spices you have to kind of think about. It can be worthwhile pulling them out for a period of time and testing it out and seeing if you feel better. But I do find that not everyone needs to keep them out completely. And then oftentimes when food sensitivities, just in general, not just the nightshade vegetables, but in general, food sensitivities can contribute. But what the gut healing program that I do with my clients can do is we can pull out some of those sensitive foods, rebalance the gut, repair, and then we can start to reintroduce some of those foods. So the idea isn't that you have to pull out all foods for a really long, forever. There are some you aren't going to want to reintroduce for sure, but, and gluten, and I would say gluten in particular is a big one. There is a marker on the GI map test that will indicate whether or not it creates gut inflammation for you. So you'll know that it's one that you may not want to reintroduce, but many, many foods, especially for those who feel like they start reacting to foods, they pull them out. Now they start reacting to more foods, they pull those ones out, and now they're eating fewer and fewer foods, and they're getting stressed about not being able to eat anything without reacting. So that's an indication that something's going on with the gut. So what we want to do is get in there, rebalance, heal, and now you can reintroduce the foods. It isn't really the foods that are the issue, but pulling them out temporarily while we heal can be really beneficial. But it's not really the foods, it's really the imbalances going on in the gut.
Right. I understand. Interesting. So tell us more about your the group that you host.
Absolutely. So the group program I have is called Pain Free Naturally. It's a 12-week program, and I have been running it for the last 2 years. I've run about 5 or 6 groups through the program already, and everyone does the GI map test as part of it. And so we do a lot of work on diet and making some changes and supporting our liver detoxification. And there's a number of things that we do initially early on in the program while everyone is waiting for their test results. And then we do a section on understanding all about the gut and the gut healing. Everyone has their own individual recommendations from their test that are slightly different from each other. But what I love about the group is that we come together for weekly Q&A sessions. So even though everyone's going through the same information through the 12 weeks, each group is actually quite different because the questions that come out in the weekly Q&As are unique to each group. So it's actually quite different. I have one client who did it right at the beginning. Actually, she was part of my first group. She said, I think I'd like to do it again. So it's not really intended necessarily for people to do it twice, but because I run an alumni program after that, an alumni mastermind program that you could be a part of long-term, just for continued support. So the 12 weeks is a new piece of information each week. There's a meal plan that goes through some of that elimination I was talking about, where the plans don't include any of those foods that we're taking out temporarily. And then the later weeks have plans where we start to incorporate some of those foods back again. So there's meal plans supported throughout the 12 weeks, new information. We are connected with a group chat in between sessions, and there's some accountability tasks each week. It's not really onerous, I'm going to say, in terms of content, but really supportive information. And those weekly Q&As that we come together on Zoom, on video call are really key if you can make those. I do record them for those that have to miss the odd one, but it's those that come into the program and attend the majority of the Q&As, I have noticed get the best results. And not only are people feeling better, reducing pain, they are losing weight if they need to, or if that's a goal. Their skin issues are diminishing. Their hormones are getting more balanced. There's a lot of side benefits to reducing inflammation.
Right. Wonderful. So tell me, for clients that may have pain from old injuries, is that still correlated with the gut somehow? If it's a physical injury to a shoulder, or because I would imagine it starts in the shoulder, no? Or how does that work? Because I could hear somebody say, well, there's nothing, it's my shoulder, it's not my stomach.
Yeah.
For example.
So, that's actually the case for me. The pain that I have is in one of my hips, which came from an old injury. And I thought the same thing, actually, that it's all about what that joint looks like, as an example. But the sensation of pain it's the body's way of like speaking to you and making sure you pay attention. So I'm not going to say that you're going to feel 16 again. Like I said that earlier, that, our bodies aren't going to be that mobile and supple and whatnot. But it's that chronic pain that is stopping you from doing some basic activities that you really enjoy, like even just going for a walk or doing some gardening, the things that you just want to be doing with your family. Those are the things that we want to feel better and be able to do. So again, even with some, I'm going to say suboptimal physiology going on in, say, a shoulder, it's still that level of inflammation that creates the ongoing pain, because the injury is old. There's not really, there has been a message through the nervous system telling you there's an injury there, but it's now healed over. Perhaps there's scar tissue, there's other things, that make it not perfect, but the actual pain signal is something that we want to teach our body isn't needed anymore, that we are going to be careful with our joint or, with an old injury location, that we're not going to push ourselves too far, but that there isn't a reason for that ongoing signal to be there. So this is something that we need to do to calm the nervous system. This is part of bringing the stress response down, and this is how stress increases inflammation. If we can reduce systemic inflammation, then we're not feeling that pain. And those people that have some gut imbalances do feel pain at a higher level than those who don't. So it is a reason to investigate what's going on in the gut, and look at your diet and look at your stress response. These are the 3 pillars that are really important factors in addressing the pain to the point where now you can go out for that walk with your family.
Right, right. And it's interesting. I mean, well, you did mention arthritis, and arthritis changes start early in life. Yeah. And I was quite surprised to find that out, that even in your 30s, you can start to have arthritic changes. And
absolutely. It's very common. In fact, I've talked to some other natural health practitioners who say, everyone over the age of, and I'm actually forgetting what age, 50, or everyone over a certain age is going to have evidence of arthritic change. Right. That's not unique. What's different is how you're feeling in your body about it. So it's changing some of those signaling patterns. Right. And we can do that with changing the level of inflammation, bringing it down through diet changes, rebalancing the gut, addressing the stress response. Those are the 3 pillars that really drive an enhanced feeling of pain.
Wonderful. And I understand that you're offering a great free gift to our listeners today that's going to address that, specifically anti-inflammatory guide and some recipes.
Yes. So I have created my anti-inflammatory guide. So it has a write-up explaining a little bit about what foods you want to avoid, which ones you want to include to reduce inflammation. There's a full shopping list, prep notes, all the recipes, a meal plan for a week. And I have had clients download it and use it for a week. And like the client I was telling you that I just spoke with today, and he was feeling better after 3 days. They've tried this plan for a week. They feel so much better. They call me up and they say, I need to do your program because it's only been 1 week and I'm on this guide and I feel great. So for those people, those diet changes are really key. And that can be just the start, because you can start to feel even better if you do all the aspects of the program. So it's a really great place to start. And I'm thrilled to be able to provide it for all the listeners today.
That's wonderful. What a great place to start. In our home, what's in our cupboards, what we choose to put in our mouth.
Exactly.
And now we just need to do it, put it to practice.
And you know what? And that is also a big piece of it, which is why I love community. I have a free Facebook group where there's a community there. Obviously my group program, I love groups. I do work one-on-one and love that as well. But it's where you can find support, because just information doesn't put you into action. It's like gathering more information and learning more is great, but you have to actually start to make the changes. And sometimes having someone help you, hold your hand, whether it's a one-on-one relationship with your practitioner or some community support, that's really needed to take those action steps. It's one thing to read something in a guide. It's quite different to put it into action in your kitchen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Bonnie. That's a great presentation. Lots of very good information you've shared with us. I don't think I was aware quite to the extent that the gut is responsible for all of our body, and how it feels. That's something. So
thank you for your great questions and engaging conversation. I hope everyone's found this interesting as well, because it certainly was a revelation for me as I have learned these things over the years. So glad to be sharing it. So thank you, Trish, for putting together this summit where we can share all this great information.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. And for those tuning in, please be sure to come back for the rest of the interviews on the Holistic Pain Relief Summit. Remember to access your free gift from Bonnie and pop into the Facebook group and share your takeaways from today's experts and ask any questions. If you know of someone who can benefit from these amazing speakers, please share. They can join at holisticpainreliefsummit.com, where the recordings will be live for 36 hours. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.